Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's session. We are into the day 4 of our bootcamp. This is JB and I am joined by Bogdan, Gilda and Gina. And today's topic is setup. We have divided the setup section into 3 sessions. And this session in particular, Bogdan is going to talk about the permissions and security and other configurations. And setup, as we have seen, it takes up to 38% of the exam, and we can expect 22 questions. So a little bit about Bogdan. It's my first time working with him, and he has been very thorough since the very beginning. He has a lot of questions, and he made sure that he has everything in place. He has put in a lot of effort, like all the other speakers. And I'm very glad to have him today. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Bogdan. But before that, just a little bit of housekeeping. This session is going to be recorded, and we will upload the recordings after the bootcamp concludes, which is after November 18th. And please post your questions in the chat window, and we will address these questions at the end of the session. We have a hard stop, like we have to wrap up the session at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we'll try to answer as many questions as we can, but if we cannot, we can have them addressed during the Ask Me Anything panel or on the Slack channel. And we will be sharing all the homework and other resources on the Slack channel as well. And please feel free to reach out for any other questions. And now, without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Bogdan.
Let's put a face on the name as well, and not just here. Hey guys, so a quick intro. I am with Marketing Cloud for about 6 years, I think now. It's right after Salesforce bought ExactTarget. I remember my first install was using that orangish color from ExactTarget. So yeah, that goes a little bit down the memory lane. A few things about me. I'm still a gamer. I like to play games. No longer a young man to do the shooting, but I enjoy some strategy games. I like to drive a car, not necessarily a manual shift, but I like driving. So if the AI takes over and every car will be driven by robots or algorithms, that's not gonna make me. I'll die with the wheel. And I like music. I used to be in university a DJ, so I have some speakers, and I like to be the DJ for parties, but it's more of a hobby. It's nothing, let's say, professional. So next slide, please. As JB mentioned, that we will be looking at one part of the setup. We're going to see which part in the exam overview, and then we went and we discussed. There's 3 major sections that I want to cover. From that is the setup, home, and assistant, the creation of users. We're going to touch a little bit on business unit roles and permissions as well, and we're going to look at ways to integrate the SFMC platform with other platforms, and one of the ways is FTP. And some details on how do you do, for example, an FTP setup. So, and there will be quizzes after each section. So I hope you guys stay engaged, because I'm not going to wait till the end of the presentation to ask you questions. There will be slides with questions throughout the presentation. All right, next slide, please. This is the first section, the exam overview. Just like when you are in one of those big halls, your here sign, this is where we are. So within we are in the biggest section of the exam, the setup, which is a 38%. And we're going to talk about the configuration, the users, the permissions, and we'll describe the features in the setup, home, and assistant. So we're not going to be talking about the configuration of business unit. That will be covered in, I believe, the next session for this. So this is a nice visual, I think, for people interested in pursuing career marketing cloud and in an admin role. You're going to be pretty much the mechanic. You need to understand how the platform runs and make it sure it runs properly. And if something goes wrong, you have to fix things. And I guess because I like car analogy, I'll continue with this analogy throughout the course. Next slide, please. First major section is the setup home and setup assistant. So if you are the mechanic, then this is your user guide. This is your user manual of what you need to do. And this is something that is helpful on the initial setup of the platform. It's not something that you will touch later on. And depending on where you're going to end up, you might see if the client already had the instance for a long time. This is at 10 or 15%. This was not actually pursued because this is actually a new addition. I forgot the exact time, but it's a new addition in the admin, in the setup section of the platform. So quickly, it's about it's getting started, some information, then it's about configuring your marketing cloud for usage. And then you set up your data structure, those connections, integration, FTP, we'll dive into that. Number 4 and 5, so you can even set up a content, and by content, I mean a simple email, and then it will help you guide in number 5, the sending. So make sure you have the data coming in, you have a simple content, simple email, and it works. You can actually send emails from the platforms because at the core, this is the raison d'etre, the main purpose of this. And last but not least, you can get some insights with analytics, and it talks about reporting. So that is the structure of the assistant. I just want to point on two, the biggest sections, this number 2 and number 3. So for number 2, you see there is some account settings that will be covered actually on the next one. Next slide. This one, yes, let's stay here. And then there's the configuration of roles and permission, the creation of user. This is something we will be covering today. And then for the set up your data structure, this is all about setting up the import of data, setting up the FTP, the SFTP, secure FTP for import data, and then applying some filters and segments so you build your audience. Next slide, please. That was the setup assistant. For the setup home is, if you go in the setup menu, this is what you'll see in the first, as the first page. There's actually questions on this, so pay attention. It is not just an informative page. There will be questions in the exam about this. Basically, if you look at it on the top, you see there's a carousel with links to helpful resources, information. And then at the bottom, I guess this is a something that is more important for your day-to-day admin, which is the monitoring, the metrics. And I put there 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, just to see what is displayed here. Number 1 is the journey. So you have running journeys. You can see if they're finishing, if they're stopped, if they're running. Number 2 is automations. Same thing. How many are completed? How many are still scheduled? Or if they have errors. Data extensions just account content, the assets like emails and other blocks that are being created, or pages. And then the users. And there are view details where you can see a description, a more detailed description. And let's have our first question. So we covered setup assistant at home. So if your company would like to use the setup assistant, you just purchased the marketing account, which activities are included? And you can have the 4 options. Let's give people some time to respond. I can see some responses. They're looking very good so far.
I see most of the answers are A and D.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now
All right.
answer.
Yeah, let's move to the next slide. The answer is A and D. Very good. So remember that section setup data structure with the, actually D is part of the section with the FTP. I wanted to trick you guys with C content builder, because build content with confidence or something like that, but you're not actually setting up the content builder. You're just building an email, which means it's content. So don't get fooled by that. Very good. All right. Next session is user roles and permission. This is a bigger section than the previous one. So this is where the old meets the new a little bit, because on let's look on the right. So the classic, what I put there is the roles that came from ExactTarget. So you could be administrator, content creator, data manager, and analyst. And there's a short description. I know it's small font, but don't worry, this PowerPoint will be available for you. Read through them, because there could be questions saying, if your company wants to give some person a role to do the following, which role would you assign, for example, for that user, right? On the new side, this is the after, I guess, the acquisition. There's a different way they package the roles. So you have marketing cloud administrator, marketing. Basically, everything that starts with marketing cloud is it's the new role, and you can mix and match. And yes, Cody is right there. Look, Cody tries to say something. You can create custom roles too. Thank you, Cody. And you can create custom roles. So you're not limited by the mixing and matching of the default roles. For each roles, you have a set of permission, and believe me, it's checkboxes. It's, I think, over 200 or 250. You can almost get lost there in how many ways you can customize. There is some documentation if you ever want to go that route. From my experience, it's a little bit of a trial and error. We're trying to prevent somebody from accessing something, and we just checked some things and unchecked things until we got it right. So don't be scared if does it mean classic roles are no longer important? No, they are important. For example, and I have a slide where you'll see how different roles cover different sections. Usually, if you want to become an admin, you select the administrator and marketing cloud administrator. The combination of the permissions from these two roles will allow you to do almost, if not everything, in marketing cloud. So it's not that they're not relevant. They have to be used in specific scenarios, and this depends on the business request. And to explain a little bit that with the permissions now, if we go, this is actually important. So look at number one. Access, it's actually a combination of role and business unit. This is a concept that I had a client, it was really hard to explain, because like, yeah, but if I'm admin, not admin, if I want to do some testing BU, why can't you put me admin, or why can't you? So it depends on the BU. You can be just a simple viewer in a BU that, let's say, has, I don't know, sensitive operations. You shouldn't be touching anything, like in Automation Studio or stuff like that. But you could have another BU that is for training purposes in your company, and they can put you channel manager or data manager, so you can deal with stuff. So this is something you can do in Marketing Cloud, because Access, remember, is a combination of role and business unit. And the image there on the right is the way you assign roles. And there's two ways. You can assign it directly to the user. So regardless of the business unit, it will always be administrator. Or, like I said, you select the business unit and they say it's a channel manager here, and in the other business unit, it's a viewer only. The second part, the permissions, this is a little bit tricky because see, it's grant versus deny versus what the hell is that yellow thing? It's maybe. So let me explain. Permission granted, so grant and deny, they're pretty obvious. You are allowed to do this or you're not allowed to do this. However, there is this maybe thing that is not explicitly granted or not explicitly denied. It pretty much what it says, it's I'm going to allow other roles in case this role gets combined with other roles. I'm going to allow other roles to make a decision. So if you have other roles that will say grant, the yellow will turn into green. If you had other role that will say no, deny, the yellow will turn into red. If everybody is a yellow, so they don't, by default, it turns into red. So it's a permission denied. And permission denied is the boss. So you can combine as many roles as you want that offer grant. If one of them has denied, it will override everything. This is important. Next slide, please. And this is the slide where I said different roles have different by default settings. What are we looking at? We're looking at the default. It's related to the Automation Studio. So looking at what are the default roles of Marketing Cloud Administrator, Marketing Cloud Viewer, Marketing Cloud Channel Manager, and so on, how they apply to Automation Studio. So everybody has access to see it, but to create automation, to delete, execute, you will see that the administrator and channel manager can do that, while the viewer and the content editor cannot. And the security administrator is the maybe, so it will rely on other role in conjunction to this to dictate, or it will default to deny if there is no other role here. So we talked about roles. Roles are assigned to users. So let's talk about users. I guess you would need to create user at some point in time to give people access. There's two ways to create users. Again, I'm going to start from the right, the manual way. It's simply clicking the new user button, and you see you have to provide a name, reply email address, and so on. The important field is notification email address. So reply email address is not that important. Notification is important because it's where they will receive their first login and then to update their password. And if you do the account setting with the security, you have to insert that code. They will receive it there. So make sure you don't make any typos in that field. The time zone, it also relates on how you see date fields, for example. And API user shouldn't care too much about it, except when you do MCA Connect. You will check that checkbox because it's a API user type. Most of the time, you will not check the checkbox. On the left, for the bulk, you have 100 users. It's hard to do it by one at a time. So you can actually import CSV files with this type of column. So your name, username, password, reply, notification email, and so on. And role external keys, if you go into the roles, you'll see they have this description, the external key, sys def content. I guess it's the content manager, for example. And def data is the data manager, and so on. And you have some options. So use bulk for large amount of users being added or updated. It works. And it looks like Cody has something to say. What do you say? I know another way. So what's it, Cody? What's the another way? You don't want to tell to us? Yeah, I'll figure it out. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. the next slide I said, let's talk about business unit, because I said the access is actually the combination of the role and the business unit. So as you know, Marketing Cloud has a parent business unit, and then you can have children. If I'm not mistaken, I think even children can have children. So you will do that by creating business units. It's usually part of the contract, so you don't have unlimited. You will actually get an error message if you're trying to create more than what's in your contract. Same thing as the users, you can do it manually or you can do it in bulk. There's not many scenarios that I can think where you will do a bulk, since BUs are really limited, like 3, 4, 5, because they cost money. You will do it the manual. I'm not going to go through what you set up here because the business unit setup is going to be covered in the next session. But just so you know, this is something that maybe something quickly. Number 3 and number 4, if you look, there's the physical address. Whatever you put there, if you use the out-of-the-box footer in your emails to be CASL compliant in Canada, to be CAN spam in America, and GDPR in Europe, and I think there are other ways to name this. This is what, by default, the email will pick up. Whatever you write here, the company name, the street address, and so on. And the last settings there at the bottom, unsubscribe settings, it's unsubscribed from this business unit versus all business unit. This is where you're going to talk with how you're going to plan to manage your subscriptions. If the business units, for example, are being used to determine brands. So your company has a parent and then brand A, brand B, brand C, and they don't necessarily unsubscribe from one of another or the other because they talk about different things, then you will say unsubscribe from this business unit only. This is usually how you use that. All right, let's do a quiz. So this is about roles. One of your user reports that he cannot send emails. So you check the roles, you see that it has 3 roles. The content creator, that's the classic one, Marketing Cloud Channel Manager, Marketing Cloud Viewer. What would you do?
Most of the answers are C. Moving on to the answer.
Yeah, let's go. That's right. So remember the rule. Deny, who's the boss? Deny is the boss. And MC Viewer has deny on almost everything. It has grant only on access, but if you need to do something, run automation, send an email, deny. So I don't care if you are channel manager, which allows you, gives you the grant, who's the boss, deny, viewer comes and say, I'm the boss. So just by removing that, you will enable things that were denied by the role Marketing Cloud viewer. Very good. Let's move to the final section, integrations. I think this is the biggest one. Let's check on time. We still have time. All right, so this is funny, but it's half funny. It's serious business. Do we have any Star Wars fan here? Like the old ones, the new ones? This is the way. No, this is the way. So what we're seeing here, and you'll see there are 2 different setup sections in the platform where we can go. That could be confusing, but this speaks again to the fact that Marketing Cloud is the former exact target. So in the email studio, which was the Yoda of Marketing Cloud, there is an admin section where you can go. And it will cover everything that was the core of the email studio. So things like business unit and users and roles, these are things that are not new for Marketing Cloud. On the right, what you see is that the drive to port almost all the menus in this new Lightning look and feel across the various Salesforce platform, which is the way I think is going forward. So you will see almost the same options, but something extra as well. So everything that was added at the point they decided to cut off the old setup and then just move everything in the new setup is going to be here. So just by looking in this screenshot, like Google Analytics integration, some Einstein, for example, I don't think you'll find them in the old setup. So stop looking there. So then this is this the way? This is the way? Not really. There are still some small gems that you can find in the old setup. Things like, if I'm not mistaken, the auto suppression list, that is a custom settings. I think you need to enable it to request for it. I don't remember seeing that in the new setup. Every time I need to go there and set it up, I will always go in the old. So to summarize, this is the way, but don't forget the old way in case you don't find anything. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. So let's dive into the integration overview. Usually when you integrate the platform, you integrate it because you want to either bring in data or get data out of it, right? And there's also, if you're talking about API, there's different functions or things you can trigger via the API. But most of the integration revolves around passing data back and forward. The files are very easy to explain. It's usually when you deal with batch, you use Automation Studio with activities such as file import and so on. We'll have a slide, but you can schedule it or you can do a file trigger. So when the file arrives, the automation starts and imports and does stuff. For schedule, it will just start at a specific date. And this is important because you'll have questions in the exam, and pay attention to this. Almost every time you hear the companies to import something and some team will receive it, but they're not sure, they don't give you a date. Usually the right answer is a triggered file automation, so a file drop, right? When you see the file will arrive by 4 a.m. or something like that, usually think about schedule automations to do that. So import data, extract data if you want to get it out. It's important to know its CSV format. I'm working with a client currently that doesn't have CSV format, and this became quite a problem that we're trying to resolve. But there are some options. You can encrypt, decrypt file. You can zip it, unzip it. So there are some file transformation you can do, but not on the format. CSV is the format. Another way you can get data in is through Marketing Cloud Connect. That is a installed package, and it's your connection out of the box with the Salesforce core clouds. I'm talking about Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Financial Cloud, Health Cloud, your grandma poker night cloud. I think they can build any cloud that they can think of on the core. So this is the core, and pretty much the main thing that it offers a synchronization of data. I have a slide at the end, so I'm just going to go quickly through this. And different events happening in Salesforce that will trigger, for example, events or journeys in Marketing Cloud. And there's also this thing called distributed marketing that will be covered in the connected, I think we have a session on additional Marketing Cloud products. I forgot the exact name. But all these use MCA Connect. And last but not least, another way to integrate with the platform is API. There's two APIs, SOAP and REST. SOAP is the oldest one. REST is the new kid on the block, but it grows bigger by the day. It covers more and more objects like content builder, journey builder. You will find it much easier to interact with those with REST. However, let me try to remember, hope I'm not mistaken here. Things like automations, you will have to use SOAP if you want to trigger an automation or build a component activity of automation. For the rest, remember there's a 2 steps you need to do. It's a auth 2.0 that involves the retrieval of a token. So you make a first call, you retrieve the token, and then you make the second call to actually do something. As an admin, you're not going to be, this is more a dev part, but the dev team for the other platform might come to you as an admin and say, so how do I integrate? And you have to know the basics, the rest, the SOAP, the 2 steps automation, and just point them to the documentation section of the API, Marketing Cloud API, and they can find the endpoints and all the details. Let's move to the next slide. All right, so we mentioned files, MCA Connect, and API. I want to go a little bit now into more detail. So for files, what do you need to do if I want to get data through files? So it depends. If I want to allow other people to push into Marketing Cloud, Marketing Cloud can create FTP users. The default username is the MID of the business unit, and you can create up to additional 3 users. There's some things you can control. So I want to restrict access. If you're trying to log in to that user, you have to have a special IP because I'll create like a whitelist. And there's some technical details that are important. So minimum password length is 12 characters. And by default, you create it, it's enabled, it's unblocked. So it's just gonna work. Now, if you need to push, not push the files, sorry, to pull the files from a different SFTP location, you will have, sorry, what is MID? It's, I think it's member ID. It's unique code for a each business unit. When you log in and you see the business unit and there's a drop-down list, is the name, and then there's an MID. Member ID, I never know what M stands for, but it's the ID of the business unit. So if you need to go to a different external location, that is where you need to create file locations. So you see here, there's different location type. So we see it's enhanced FTP, sorry, external FTP, safe house. Look, Amazon, that's a new addition. I think it was 1 or 2 releases ago, if I'm not mistaken. So they keep adding different different options, but most of the time you will select the external SFTP. So you'll have to provide what's the URL, what's the username or password, or you can use keys, like, and we see the key management. So before you use the key in file location, actually you have to go into the key management. And you have those key types to asymmetric, symmetric. Most of the time, again, you will work with SSH keys. So that's usually a file. As an admin, you don't need to know much. There should be a security team or an IT dev team that does this. They will give you a file. It's usually a text file with a lot of those crazy characters that becomes the key. You import it here, and then you use it when you define file location. Say, I don't want to use a username and password. I'm going to use an SSH key to authenticate myself to that URL, to the FTP server. And code is right there. Let's not forget. any file that you bring in the enhanced FTP, or you decrypt it in the safe house, for example, it will be there for 21 days, which is normal because otherwise Marketing Cloud will run out of space pretty fast, the servers, if it keeps the servers. So if you need some file, you have to get it and maybe archive it in a different FTP, or just save it on your computer. Let's go to the next slide. I just want to cover here now into even more details because you will have questions, not just I want to have a file import. They will ask you, so, okay, we're bringing in the file this and we want to do this. What is the sequence of activities in the automation? And how you gonna trigger it? Remember I told you about the schedule versus file drop? So these are the activities that show up in most of the questions, and you have to understand what they do and how to use them. So the import activity usually does what it says. So it goes into a location and imports and looks for a file. So see, location, source, naming pattern, you have to look for a file, and then imports that data into a data extension. You get to choose the data format. Again, it's CSV, but you can choose the delimiter. Is it a comma? Is it a pipeline? Is something custom? And if you have date fields, it's important to talk to your source and see what's the date format. Is it month, day, year? Is it year, month, day? Because there are multiple formats. You want to do it right. And of course, you have to do destination. Like I said, you put it into data extension. And the last step is you do field mapping. There's 3 options. You can map by header row, which is the most used one. You can map by ordinal, which is column 1 from the file will go into column 1 into data extension, column 2 into 2, and so on. And the third one is manually mapping. So you will drag and drop which column from the file matches which field in the data extension. The data extract is the reverse almost of this. So you already have the data. One type of data extract is reverse. And let's talk about that. So the first type, DE, data extension, is the reverse of the import. You have data into a data extension. I want to get it into a file because I want to send it somewhere. So if you have questions on some team needs to receive some file, you better choose an answer where data extract, especially if the data comes from a data extension, is there. There are other types, and here is, I call it the gift that keeps on giving. Some types you don't even know they exist until you ask Salesforce support. So be prepared. If you don't find the special extract that you're looking for, to contact support and see if there is one maybe that's built. Tracking is something that comes out of the box. This is the old way, I call it, because I really like data views now, of getting data out, email metrics data. So if you're in a scenario where you have to work with a team that says, give me all your clicks, open, sends, everything, email name, and so on, subscriber key, email address, all that stuff. You could use a data extract of type tracking, and there's a list of pick lists, the options. You can choose send, bounces, unsubscribe, opens, and so on. And it will create a zip file with the bounces and everything as CSV options. Gazip audit trail is for, you can have like a log, who logged in. So if you ever talk to security team saying, I want to be, I want to know who logged in case somebody tries to steal data. Say, yeah, we can do that. I'll give you a log. And there's activity trail as well, but that's for another day. So in the configuration, depending on the type, if I choose data extension, I have to select the data extension key. If I choose tracking, I have to do the checkboxes thing. So it varies. There's nothing common almost. File transfer, again, popular. It's you have two options. So the first time you select the file action, it presents with the option. What do you want me to do? Manage file or move from safe house? You will select manage files if you want to move the file, if you want to unzip or decrypt it. So let's say a file gets, you get a file which is encrypted. So I will choose manage file to decrypt it. And the decryption will go in safe house. And move from safe house is how you transfer externally, or maybe you want to encrypt it first. So it's in safe house, and then you want to transfer to an external location, use move from safe house. Configuration, again, is dependent on the action type. For manage file, you have checkboxes. Do you want me to decrypt? For move from safe houses, the checkbox is, do you want me to encrypt? And so on. Yes, Cody, I told them about safe house, shut up. All right. And just to summarize it, because I talked a lot, but hopefully this will cement the foundation. Let's take a real life example of how you import an encrypted file. So before you even write the automation, what do you need to do? You need to set up your source. So where am I getting the file from? Some external source, FTP, yes. Remember why we need to create a file location. If I need, if I'm dealing with encrypted files, when I decrypt them, they usually go in the safe house. So make sure that is enabled. The decryption uses a private key, usually. You cannot decrypt it just by checking a box. You have to provide a key. So you have to set up a private key. Remember, we talked about key management. That's where you go. And of course, you need to align on the file name. So after you do all that, it's easy to build the automation now. You put the file transfer, you select manage file. The source, the file location has already been created. So you select that, you configure it, decrypt file, and you use your private key. After that, you import the file. The location is safe house. You're looking for the name that you agreed upon. You select the data extension and you do the field mapping. And that's how you ended up from what is on an encrypted file into a data extension, and you can use it for segmentation, to start sends, journeys, and so on. Cody says, should we use schedule or file trigger? Yeah, I don't know. This one, it depends. If the file comes at a specific time, like I said earlier, we can use schedule. If we don't know about the time, let's use trigger. Next slide. Okay, so I have two slides, one for MC Connect, one for API. Let me check time. Yeah, we still have time, we're good. This is an overview because MC Connect could take us half of a session almost. So let's touch upon, there will be question on MC Connect. The questions are a little bit about the setup. For the setup, I had it, but I cannot share my screen. Look for MC Connect setup in Trailhead. There's a Trailhead for this. After 5 years, every time I'm doing MC Connect, I go there, I just follow the steps one by one. I don't know them by heart, but I know what it involves, and I go there. So go there, read through that. And there will be some questions from the steps, like what did you need to do at some steps with some permissions or something like that. There will also be questions on an overview on how it works. So let's look on the left here, and the requirements on the left. So you have to install the package in the Sales Cloud. You configure it. That's the permission I said. You have to enable it in the page layouts because there will be some additional fields like email opt-out for leads and contacts in Sales Cloud, and configure field level security. In Marketing Cloud, most of the things you need to integrate an API user. That's the API example that I gave, and do the integration and map it. And there's a section in the settings, it's called Salesforce integration, where you say, for this user, for this org of Sales Cloud, this is where I want to connect to. So you'll be using the user in the first step. Again, go through the Trailblazer. I know it might be a lot and it might be confusing. It's very well explained there, step by step. You get a good thing. Some other questions will be not just configuring and what you use as an ID and so on. Is going to be on how you, or what's the benefit. So on the right here, we see we can synchronize the data. So contact leads and users can also, actually, you can synchronize data on any CRM object. For contact leads and users, you can, for contacts and leads, you can send to them because there's a contact ID and there's a lead ID associated. And then, and you can get tracking. So everything that was sent to them in Marketing Cloud, if it goes to Sales Cloud here, is going to show up in the history of those contacts and leads. At this point, I guess you would have to be a little bit familiar with how Sales Cloud data model. They have this contact leads, cases, opportunities, and so on look like to understand this. But it's not that hard. Think of them as data extensions, like very special data extensions in Marketing Cloud. So you have a data extension for contacts, and every row in the data extension, it's actually a contact in Sales Cloud. Besides the synchronizing of the data, we have here Journey Builder integration. You can use in Journey Builder, instead of a data extension as the source, you can say, if something happens in Sales Cloud, I want that person to enter the journey. Or if something, in any object, not just, you can monitor creation of contacts. When a contact is created, it should enter a journey. Or when a lead status gets updated, it should enter a journey. It will work through the MCA Connect. Think of the MCA Connect as the API bridge between these two clouds. So people will just go back and forward. It's under the hood. You don't have to do anything. You just need to know that it magically works. Something like this. The important thing, however, you need to remember here is for this bridge to work, Bogdan from Sales Cloud and Bogdan in Marketing Cloud must have the same ID. And what is that ID? That is the Salesforce ID. Salesforce CRM, Sales Service, Community Clouds, and so on. They are the boss in this relationship, not Marketing Cloud. Let's go to the API. Next slide. All right. Again, this sounds scary, but does not mean you should not go too deep. However, you should, like I said, provide some help for the devs from other teams. So this is a visual of what I hinted upon in the previous slides on how REST API works, because this will be most of the time the API that you'll be using. SOAP still has uses, but I think they're more and more limited as REST API grows and offers more and more endpoints. So step 1 and 2 are actually almost the part of the same thing for me. You ping the Marketing Cloud server, say, I have a client ID and secret, give me a token. And if your client ID and secret is good, you're gonna get a token. I think it's valid for 18 minutes. So in 18 minutes, you better make the step number 3, request resources. So if you wanna insert into a data extension, if you wanna send an email through the API, if you wanna, there's 200 endpoints. Again, Go tell the devs, go to documentation, see if you find what you need. You will use the token, and then you will use the payload, and you're going to say, if you insert into that extension, for example, what's the payload? Well, you need to know the that extension name, right? And then what's in the row? So column value, column values. If your that extension has 4, 5 columns, you could send up to 5 column name, column value pairs in there. It's a little bit, why they went this way, because previously they went with the username and password, just like you log in. This actually allows you, and I put here a note, the client ID and secret, you can control which business unit, and then within the business unit, what do you want to do there? Because again, there will be a lot of checkboxes. Do you want this client ID and secret to touch data extension? Yes, check here, check, check. Do you want it to allow to send emails? No. Okay, I'm not going to check. Do you allow it to create content, like blocks of content for content builder or journeys and so on? So that will be part of what you need to set up. And I think that's it. Let's go for a quiz. Yes, I think we have two questions this time. So let's go back to the FTP setup. So remember, you have to do FTP users, file location, key management. So when you create first FTP user, which the following are wrong? So I'm looking for the bad part here.
Just to note, there are 2 wrong answers in this one. I see many answers as A. There are 2 wrong answers.
All right, let's see what are the wrong answers. So it's A and D, AY. There's a small catch. It was the 12 characters, not 8. The default username of the MID is, of course, remember you have an allow list. So C is not wrong. And there's a small thing that it says there, even in documentation, say the user is active, enabled. You don't have to do anything. So you do not have to enable the user after creation. Let's see, do we have another one? Yes, we do. Right, so this is about the MCA Connect. This is a little bit tricky because I didn't cover, and I want to see if we have people that know a little bit about Sales Cloud. So when you sync the two, remember I told you Bogdan here has to be the same ID. So which is that ID, the subscriber key, that through MCA Connect, the two platforms will be using it?
That's great. I see the right answers from everyone.
All right, let's go. That's right, D. Good, it looks like people know. So the catch was it C or D? Why is D? Because C is being used by Sales Cloud and D is used by Marketing Cloud. If you look like in the Sales Cloud in the URL, you'll see the 15 digits. However, and this is the catch, Marketing Cloud is not case sensitive in the IDs. So there are, if you run enough contacts, for example, you will see that there could be a small a and a capital A. For Marketing Cloud, it will be the same, but in Sales Cloud, they will be different. So it's the 18 digits because that will make the subscriber key not case sensitive. And that's it for today. Unfortunately, I cannot stay. I have a hard stop, but I will be joining back at the end. There's a session for ask me anything, I think, JB.
Yes, no.
And I'll be glad to answer your questions. JB, if you can stay, maybe try to answer some of the questions. I'll appreciate it.
Yes, Bogdan, I've been thinking of that. So don't leave. If you can stay back, please stay back. Bogdan, thank you very much for your time. And I really appreciate all the amount of effort and time you have put into this. This is really awesome. And I love what Cody has to say in each slide. You made it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot one thing. Cody said he knows another way when I was saying create user bulk and manual. And I finally got him to tell me it's the API. You can actually use the API of Marketing Cloud to create users. So that's if ever as an admin, you need to do an integration with some of those complicated company-wide user management tools, tell them that there is another way you can automate it.
That's awesome. Thanks, Bogdan. And everyone else, you can stay back. I can continue with the demo. I'm going to log in and share my screen shortly. Can someone confirm you're able to see the Marketing Cloud screen?
I can see it, JB.
Okay. So we are logged into the Marketing Cloud instance, and we have a question about the member ID. Member ID is this one. So this is assigned to each instance that we have. Any number of views that we have in place, each one will be assigned a member ID. You can look at it. Look at the member ID here, and for the setup, you would hover on the username and go into the setup. I think it's taking a while to load. In the setup, you will see all the options to configure. So I am here at the setup home. At the very top of this canvas, you would see the release notes and some trailhead modules and some helpful resources. And here's the one where you can check the system status. Any issues that you're having, any downtime, everything, you can go to the Salesforce.Trust the trust site and go look the status there. So this is also something which you need to be aware of as an administrator. So whenever you are facing some issues, how do you go and look at the system status? So this is one of the way where on the setup homepage, you would go and check it. And on the bottom of the pane, you would see the it's all the data about the instance. So how many journeys are running and the automations that are running and the data extensions that are in place, the content, the number of users, everything you can see here. And on the right, you will also see the steps, how you can configure. You can also see this under the setup assistant. And setup assistant, it will guide you along the different customizations that needs to be done for a particular Marketing Cloud instance. So you can watch some of the videos here. The links are available and you can further progress and configure the steps. So you would see all this laid out in a step-by-step fashion. So you can navigate to these things. And if there's anything that you need to be aware of, you can further refer to the resources here. The trailhead modules are linked. And if you click on this one, you would be able to go to that particular section and set it up. And the last section is tracking or to look at the analytics, the reports, and how the journeys are doing or the email sends or delivered. So you can check all those tracking data in here. Some helpful links. And when you click on this, you will be taken to the appropriate reports and tracking pages. So this is all available under the Setup Assistant, and this assistant is helps us to customize the Marketing Cloud instance in a step-by-step fashion. And under the administration and under the setup, we have this divided into three main parts: the administration, platform tools, and settings. Settings will be for the overall company settings, the account settings, and the security, where we will set up all the multi-factor authentication, LO list and deny list, and the domains that we want to include. So we will look at all these things in detail in the next sessions. And in here, under administration and users, we can set up the users. So if we want to create a user, we would go and create a user here. And as Bogdan has mentioned in the slides, we can also upload, import all those users in bulk. If we have a number of users, we can import a list and create all those users at once. So we can create a new user. And in this, during the creation process, you wouldn't set up the role. Once we create, so we fill in all the details and create the password and update the user about the login details. And after the user ID is created, then you would go and select that particular user, and under the roles, you can identify which role you want to grant. And this can also be granted to the specific business unit or just to that to the entire. And under the roles, we can select the ones that are more relevant to that particular user. And as you have seen in the slides, there are 8 different kinds of roles available. Let me go back. And also we can create our custom roles. And besides roles, we can also set up some permissions as well. I would select any user and go to manage the roles. And under the roles, we can click on this and select all the roles that are available. So the administrator, analyst, content creator, data manager, distributed sending user. So these roles are more specific to the email studio, email section. And these roles, they apply to all the studios and all the features of the Marketing Cloud. And under the permissions, besides these roles, if you want to grant some specific permission, we can add those in here. So for the Automation Studio, I just want to give access to the general features or some specific actions. I can select in here. These come in addition to the role that we have set up in the previous step. And in here is the business unit. The same way we can create multiple users by using import list. The business units also, if we have multiple business units to create, we can upload a sheet and we can create those business units all at once. And under data management, you would see the FTP accounts. So every Marketing Cloud instance, it comes with an FTP account. By default, it will be the member ID, MID, and you can add up to 3 FTP users. And for the integration, so you can create some packages. These are the settings that you need to define. And under the install packages, you would create a new, I'll just get it. And by default, it comes with these are the system defined fields. And then you would go and create some components to this. So you would define which type of application that you want to create. So I just want to have an integration. Go and create it as an web app. And I would define all the permissions on each channel for the email, for the push notifications or OTT or SMS or web, and the asset permissions. I would define all these permissions in here. I'm just giving some data, dummy data, just for the demo purpose. And as the component is created, it automatically comes up with the client ID, the client secret, and the integration type. And these are the important things, the REST and the SOAP URI. These are the things that you would use while connecting to this particular application. And these are the features that are more specific to each of the Email Studio, Mobile Studio, or the Content Builder. Here we can set up the account settings and security. We can look at these in detail in the next session. And Bogdan also mentioned about another way where we can configure some of the administration setup can be checked in the Email Studio here under admin. This has the file location, scheme management, sender profile. We can define some of the features in here under the Email Studio admin section. I think I covered all that is relevant for today's session. Any questions? When the admin set up new user with MC full access, what are the roles that we need to select? So this is very important that Bogdan also pointed during the slide share. So if you are already a Salesforce administrator, you know that you would select all the permissions. Maybe you would grant the higher level of access. In Salesforce, how it works is the most permissive permissions win. But in the Marketing Cloud, the most restrictive permissions win. So if let's say you have granted permission to, you have assigned the role to be a content creator and the viewer. The viewer is the lowest permission, which has a very limited access. So the lowest permission will win. So if you are granting 2 or 3 roles at once, make sure that the lowest one is overriding all the other permissions as well. For example, I have here Marketing Cloud Security Administrator. If I use 2 or more roles together, let's say I use Marketing Cloud Administrator, that is to grant the higher level of access, to have access to all the features in the Marketing Cloud. And if I have chosen Marketing Cloud Viewer, Marketing Cloud Viewer is the lowest level of permissions. It has very limited access permissions. So it will override all the access permissions that the administrator comes with, and it will only limit to the access permissions that the viewer comes with. So if you are joining 2 or more roles, just make sure that you are using the correct combination. And this is also something which is important with respect to the exam. So you can expect a number of questions on these roles, what each role is meant for, and what kind of, what different combinations of roles you have to use to allow somebody an access to create an email or do some activity in the marketing cloud. Exactly. Selecting all roles does not mean that we are giving all access. So you have to wisely decide which role applies to the specific functionality. And if in addition to the role, you want to access more permissions, you can use the permissions. Can we do a quick demo of what we can do using the options under setup administration? Data management. So in the data management, we can set up the FTP accounts, and so a marketing cloud instance comes with the FTP. So if we want to define more FTP locations, we can set it up here. And this, I think these aspects are covered in the next session. If not, I'll make sure that we'll have the demo included in that. And I think that is all for now. Any other questions, please post them in the Slack channel. And I will share the resources and the homework in the Slack channel as well. The next session is going to be on next Tuesday. And timing is going to be the same. And I thank everyone for joining. And have a good day and take care.